Hi there, this is Luise Heinzel. Thanks for joining me today. I have the feeling that everyone at the moment is making ID cards. And I have seen so many videos about ID cards, I can't count them anymore. And every time when I have seen such a video or a post on Instagram, for example, I was like, I want to try that out. I have to make my own ID cards. But you know, life sometimes is happening. And then you think, I don't have the time today, or I have other things to do, I have projects that I have to finish first before I can start something new, and so on. But today is the day I want to try to make my own ID cards. And perhaps you might wonder, what is she thinking? Because the things that are laying on my desk here today are not that typical for making ID cards. If you have seen some already on Instagram or YouTube, then you know what I'm talking about with these colors here, for example. If you haven't seen those ID cards, I can only encourage you to type in ID cards for junk journals, or even if you only type making your own ID cards, you will find tons of results. And if you see those, you will realize that those are really close to original ID cards that have existed in the past. They are really vintage, really authentic, and I'm totally in awe with those people who can do that in such an authentic way. But I thought, on the one hand, I don't want to recreate what those people have already done. There are tons of videos about that, and I don't want to give you another of those videos, yeah? As I said, I have the biggest respect for those people who can do it in such an authentic way, and those videos are just awesome. Yeah, I don't want to say anything bad against those videos, but I thought it could also be a point if you think, I like those ID cards, but my style of journaling is completely different. If your style of journaling is like not so vintage, then perhaps you won't come to the idea to create your own ID card, because the most of the existing ID cards are really vintage, yeah? And I want to show you a way how you can combine those aspects of making an ID card. My ID cards will not be authentic, not so like the reality is or was, and they will become way more colorful than what you probably have seen already. So let's talk about the materials that I want to use today. I want to work on a digital printable paper from my Etsy shop as a background. So these little things here that you can see here are called Abandoned Walls. That's a digital paper pack from my Etsy shop. Those are normally meant as journal backgrounds. That means you can print each of these on a full sheet of paper and use that as a journal background. I have set my printer to print 4 of those pages to 1 page, so that I have this smaller format and that I can use this as it is as my background for the cards. I have printed these on matte photo paper. One of these sides of the paper is with this photo surface, and that's this one, and the back side is like normal copy paper. And if you compare that, you can probably already see that this is a really different result. The colors on the photo paper surface come out way more intense, way more vibrant, I would say. But I have done this, I mean, to be honest, I have printed this out for another project, yeah, and now I'm using it here. That's also why I have it double-sided. But this shows what different paper can do for the style of the printables that you perhaps want to print out. And there's another reason why I have done that. I want to use the advantages of the photo paper surface in combination with Distress Oxide ink in a second. And that's why I want to use the photo surface side of the paper, yeah? So if you are interested in having these, I will link them down below for you in the description box. I think these are really versatile for different themes of journals. You can use them as a background for writing, of course. You could also print them out like this and make journaling cards out of them. You could cut them down to make ephemera like pockets or belly bands or whatever. But today we are going to use them as our background for the ID cards. Another thing that I have here, and that is also from my Etsy shop, are some vintage photos. These are called vintage photo strips. And I've named them like that because you get pages like this, where you can decide how you want to cut these photos. Of course, you could use them separately and just cut them out. Then you have some cute squared photos. Looks like this, for example. So you could cut them out all separately. But you can also make some strips like this with 2 or 3 or a maximum of 4 photos in this direction or 5 photos in this direction. You can cut them like you want. So I will link this item down below for you as well. And I want to say a really, really big thank you to all of you who already have been thrilled about this printable. This took me really a long time to assemble this. I mean, at first glance, it looks like it's just photos, yeah? But I thought a lot of things behind this printable, and with choosing these photos, I had a lot of thoughts, and I wanted to have this like as versatile as possible, and of course as cute and funny and interesting as possible. And so many of you have already purchased this, and that makes me just happy. I have seen so many creations already that it's not so cold here inside, but I get, how is that called, goosebumps when I think about that, because there are so many cool ideas already with this printable. It's just amazing. So thank you so much for that, and especially for sharing your creative ideas with this printable. This is just, it's just amazing. So yeah, we will use 2 of these photos today because I want to make 2 ID cards in total. And what I also have here looks perhaps a little bit strange when you think about making ID cards, but just wait a little bit. I have some tea bags here. These are just dried tea bags, and then I've, you know, taken the tea out and flattened them a little bit so that I now can use this as material for my junk journal projects. This is stained from the tea itself. This is sprayed with some vintage photo distress oxide spray. So if you have, for example, tea from fruits like this was, and you think that's boring, just take a spray or watercolor or acrylic paint that you have watered down, and you will get something like this that looks a little bit more, you know, interesting, and perhaps you want to have another color than just what you got from the tea. Then I have some envelopes. These are already coffee dyed, but that really doesn't matter. I've just taken this material because, you know, this is nice, but it's really hard to include into projects because blue and purple, you know, it's something that I have in my stash for forever. And I thought I will now use this material so, you know, that I can just reduce these things in my stash a little bit. I have originally coffee dyed these envelopes, and on some of them there are those patterns which I've made with some stencils. I've just put coffee to the envelope, put the stencil over it, a little bit of coffee on top, and then I've put it into the sun to let it dry. And then, I mean, the most of you might know this technique. Then you get these really cool effects here. We will not see so much of this later, but that doesn't matter. I want to use this material. You could also use some normal paper. I have mainly chosen this because it's already coffee dyed, yeah? So please use what you have, and if you have some really strange materials in your stash like this, then just use it. It really doesn't matter what it is. It has to be paper, yeah? Wood wouldn't work. So let's first, oh, some tea, that's nice. Let's first decide which background we want to use. So I have to pay attention that I have the photo surface here, but that's this one, and here's this. Yeah, I think I have them in the right direction on my table so that we can this is the wrong side, so you can't play with us. We have to decide which we want to use from these, because I need the photo paper surface for a stamping technique that I want to do in a second. And I want to have something that is not too busy and not too dark. So I think we are going to go with this one perhaps. And I think it could also look really great if we had some birds. I mean, then we could also use this. The colors here are relatively similar. And I want to play around with some colors as well today to show you that ID cards don't necessarily have to be like in this typical vintage color. So why don't we use this or even that? I think I even like this better for this project. Okay, so I will go with this and with this. So I will quickly cut these out with my paper trimmer. And if you don't have this paper, or you don't have a paper that's printed to photo paper, then of course you could do this idea with any other paper as well, but you will not get this effect that I will get when I do the next step. Yeah, that works only on photo paper. I'm just thinking this is also really good. Let's make 3 cards. Why don't we just make 3 cards? And because I want to use a lot of water in a second, I'm going to take my jelly plate and I'm just sticking these papers here to the plate so that they can't move. If you have seen my other videos where I used photo paper in combination with water and then oxide ink or distress ink, you have seen me struggling a lot with this technique because the paper, you know, is doing what it wants when you make it wet. And this way, I mean, I don't know why I haven't come to this idea earlier. This is just genius because, I mean, don't say that you're a genius, but this is genius because the paper can't warp when I make it really wet now. And before I make it wet, I will show you which stamp sets I have chosen for today's project, because I'm mixing my stamps a little bit, and that's also something that I can recommend. Just go through your stamp collection and see what you like, see what you think could fit. I definitely have stamps that fit really well to this ID card stamp look, but I also have stamps that have nothing to do with that, yeah, and I want to use those as well. I want to also show you that you can use those even if you don't have the same stamps like I have. I want you to be able to join, yeah, and to do this as well. So let's go through the stamps. This is eccentric, number CMS 448. All of the stamp sets that I'm showing you are by Tim Holtz and Stampers Anonymous. I have chosen this because, yeah, I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? Here are a lot of numbers, really great things for stamping also smaller details. In this set, there are a lot of smaller numbers. I will also link all of the sets down below for you so that you can check them out in detail. The next one is Field Notes. I think the most of you know that set, so please ignore these clear stamps here. They are not from that set. Everything that you can see here is from the Field Notes set, and here's also, you know, some really great writing and also some numbers. Some of these round elements here, these like postmark stamps, are really great for this project. But I also have this. This comes from the last release from Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz. This is called Note Quotes. The number is CMS 463. And I thought this thingy here could be really, really helpful. And this one is also from the last release. It's called The Inspector. Absolutely favorite, because, I mean, this stamp set is just gorgeous. He is, I mean, the number is CMS 465, and he is just amazing. When I got this stamp set, I was like, what shall I do with this man? Because I thought I'm not so into like these kind of stamps. but you can't believe how often I have stamped this stamp in the meantime. It's just amazing. But I don't want to use him, but some other things from here. Here are so many tiny things. Also this here with this little star is really, really helpful for what we want to do today. And I've just, here it is. I thought I lost one stamp set. I want to use this stamp here from the, please stay here, from the entomology set, CMS 328. This is, I think, really great for the background. I will also start with this in a second. And when I have taken that out from my collection, I thought, ooh, I can't use these little guys here. But then I thought, why not? Why not? So we are going to use some of these as well today. So let's see. We are going to start with some water. And what I'm doing now and how I am doing it, it's only working on matte photo paper. Yeah, please don't try that with normal copy paper. If you would print a digital printable paper on normal copy paper, the step with the water would already let the ink bleed completely. You need a paper, photo paper, that can handle water or other wet mediums. That's the first thing, really important thing. If you want to do this with scrapbooking paper, of course you could do that. If you want to use scrapbooking paper, which is already printed when you buy it, of course you could do that as well. But then I would recommend to use not too much water to make the paper not, you know, you don't want to have paper mache. Yeah, this paper can handle a lot of water. And for this technique on the photo paper, we need a lot of water. But please try that out depending on the paper that you want to use, how much water you want to use. And I'm now making this really, really wet. It's soaking wet. And we need that to get a really, really loose result of the stamp. So I'm going to take this as like a background stamp, and I'm going to take Black Soot Distress Oxide ink. You could also use Distress ink, but with the oxide ink, you get the oxide effect as well, of course. And I'm going with nearly no pressure over this to get not the whole stamp inked, but only a little bit. And then I'm going to take this and I'm pressing this down here into the water, lift it up. Don't think, ooh, a fail. Just take a dry paper towel, put that on top and lift up the ink, which is not in the paper now, but in the water. I mean, that is not good English. Here, it's perfect. Do you know what I mean? You want to lift up the ink that is sitting on the paper and the water that is too much, and then you get a really, really loose and cool effect. I will show you this in detail, of course, later. Let me just stamp there again. But before I do that, I make sure that my stamp is completely dry. I don't want to get water into my oxide ink pad. So I'm making sure that this is completely dry. And then I'm going to take just some more of the Black Soot Oxide ink, apply that really, really randomly and with nearly no pressure so that we don't have too much ink. And then I'm going to press that into the water here. And I have seen some of you doing this technique in videos. Thank you very much for doing that and showing me also different things that you can do with this technique. But I have also seen some of you struggling with this technique. And I guess there's something that you, I mean, a little thing in your head that you have skipped with this technique. If you spritz water to your paper, Barbara, attention. Because she was wondering about that. I mean, Barbara from 49 Dragonflies, she was wondering about what happened on her paper when she has tried this technique for the first time. And there's a really easy answer. Because when you stamp, Barbara, into the water and you have a really big puddle here on your paper and you stamp into that, especially with stamps that have a more solid image, yeah, this writing is relatively small and filigree, but if you have something like, for example, this here, yeah, with a solid area, and you stamp that into the water and you lift the stamp up, then you get a puddle of ink around your stamped image. The longer you leave that on the paper before you take your dry paper towel and lift it up, the more stained will your paper get around the actual stamp impression. Yeah, so if you say, for example, I have 3 papers and I will do several of these after each other, you spritz water, you stamp, you spritz water, you stamp, you spritz water, you stamp, and you wait this time until you lift up the water from here, which you've stamped first. Then you will get a staining around your stamped image, and that's normal. Yeah, the longer this puddle of ink and water stays there, the more abstract gets the result gets, and the more stained the background gets. So if you want to avoid that, just lift up this mixture of ink and water as soon as possible after you have stamped. Barbara, I hope that was helpful. Because she asked me and she said, that was not so successful. And then I've watched her video again and I thought, yeah, why? And then I thought, yeah, you have stamped here and here and here and here and here and then lifted everything up, and that's a little bit dangerous. Yeah, but that was the solution. So let's perhaps take some labels. I want to see what happens with labels. So I'm going to take both of these, and I also want to take some of these little guys here. I find it really helpful to place the stamps where you want them and then go on with the stamping. I think that can help a lot for getting an idea of how that can look in the very end. So now I want to take a color which is like a little bit popping out and also shows up really well on the darker areas here. And since we have this blue here, I think I want to go with some turquoise. I know this is blue and not turquoise, but I want to go with peacock feathers and evergreen bough because I think that looks great. Here, both of these, and here I think I will start with peacock feathers. So I'm going to lift the stamp up, put more water here, and perhaps you are wondering what the heck is happening here. If you haven't seen my other videos, then you might have missed that this is waterproof now. This only works on photo paper, yeah? Matte photo paper. Glossy photo paper doesn't work, only matte photo paper. I'm so sorry that I say that so aggressively, but there have been so many questions after my last videos with this technique that I was nearly freaking out because I thought I have no chance to answer all of those questions. And there have been a lot of confused people out there. And I totally get that because normally, of course, you would think this would bleed and what we've stamped below would bleed, but it doesn't bleed. It gets over each other and you can create the coolest layered stamped effects without smearing what you have underneath because it's waterproof. If I would if I would spritz more water here, look, nothing happens. It stays there. It's waterproof. Okay, so then let's go on with the other stamps, and I will just go step by step and just spritz some water to the area where I have placed the stamp for orientation. What was that? And then I will just stamp. And then let's take some Distress Oxide Ink Lumberjack Plaid. I think this red is really, really great for those like typical ID card stamp colors. Does that make sense? I'm hoping. you could also, of course, for this whole technique, use distress ink. Yeah, I will use the Lumberjack Plaid ink, distress ink later for another kind of stamping. But in this step, I want to have everything really loose, and the oxide effect of the oxide ink gives me, for my feeling, more possibilities to do that. So I'm going to spritz more water here. This is waterproof, I can do that. And I want to have a really, like, nearly smeared, smooth stamping. So that means I'm going to take the stamp, I'm inking it up, but I don't press too much, so that that gets really to the background. So when we have that, shall we add more, like, bigger numbers to the background? I think we could try that. What about this one here? Stamp it here. And the more water you use, the more abstract this gets, of course. The less water you use, the more concrete it gets. And that is, I think, the most awesome thing about this technique. Because when I think, okay, I want to have a really concrete number here on the bottom, for example, I can just take my ink up the stamp, and I can get this. And if I think, ooh, that's perhaps a little bit too much of the oxidation, immediately, don't wait, immediately spritz water. Can you see this grayish puddle here? You can lift off the oxidation completely with this technique, and you will have the, like, real color. Yeah. Before this it was gray, so let's do it here perhaps as well, so that you can, this stamp, that you can compare it. But you can, I mean, it will stay permanent, but you can control the amount of oxidation. I think that's the best explanation that I can give. Look, this is way more grayish than this, and if you like it, you can leave it, and if you don't like it, water. It's gone. Okay. So these are completely dry now. As you can see, they are not flat, but for me, that doesn't matter. If you want to have them really flat, then please just iron them. So before we do anything else and decide for some more concrete stamping for the foreground here now, because this is not finished yet, I want to back these things with the other materials that I have laying around here, meaning my tea bags and these envelopes, because that way I can imagine better what I want to do and how this whole thing will look in the end. And this also gets then a little bit more flat, because I want to glue it and then sew around it so that I have an easier job to stamp later. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these envelopes, and I'm trying to find a position here that I like, and a frame width that I like. So that means we are going to take some glue. I'm just taking a glue stick because I will sew around this thing in a second, and for that I don't need a really strong glue. But if you don't have a sewing machine or you don't want to sew, then please use a stronger glue. And I will just glue this down. Relatively wonky, if I can manage that, so that I get a little frame here and here and here and here. I will cut in a second. And I'm trying to cut here so that I get the same width of frame like I have here, all around the whole card. And when I have that, I'm going to take these, turn them around, and I'm taking my glue stick again, some glue here, and then I'm going to glue my tea bags on here, but also with a little distance here, so that we get another layer, another frame, another layer that is bigger than the others. If you are struggling with the fact that you waste a lot of this tea bag material, because you know I am gluing this here to the whole back side and this will be covered up later. I'm doing that because it's so easy and I don't want to tear my tea bags, and I have a ton of tea bags. You could also, of course, save some material by just tearing or cutting smaller strips and then just gluing them only around the frame so that they peek out. But I want to reach a really squishy result, meaning I want to have this, you know, that you can feel that later when the card is finished. So that's the reason why I'm adding several layers of the tea bags here to the back. So then they look like this from the back. And then I'm going to take 3 more envelopes. Ooh, this one is perhaps a little bit small. Ooh, I've just grabbed the wrong one. Excuse me, please. It should be, here we go. It should be, you know, if you look at it from the front and you put it on here, it should be a little bit bigger than you want the tea bags to peek out here. Yeah, so perhaps in 2 minutes this will make sense. So in this case, the bottom envelope is like exactly the same size like the tea bags are peeking out here. Can you see that? So it's just here and the tea bags are there, but that really doesn't matter. You can cut that to the size that you like, and that is like also handleable for your journal, of course. If you want to use that card as a journaling card later, then of course please make it in the size that you can use for your journal. Or if you want to turn that into a pocket, then you can of course just vary the size. So I'm going to glue this just down here like so. Before I take these to my sewing machine, I want to decide which photos we want to use. So let's see. I think I want to use this clown here, because a clown on an ID card is like just funny. And I think he looks really cool here, but I think I want to trim him down in a second a little bit. I think I want to use this funny man here. And this is relatively colorful, isn't it? Especially because of this blue here. I think it would be good to have a younger person there. What about this boy here? And when I have glued this down, I will take this to my sewing machine and I will sew around the card itself and the photo as well, because I think that looks really interesting. So this is how it looks after I have sewn around it. I really like this, and I also really like this imperfect sewing, but of course you could also do that way more straight, or just leave this step out if you don't like that, or if you don't have a sewing machine. I will later on make something with this frame here. Yeah, please don't be confused. This will not stay as it is now, but I want to use the chance of this flat surface for more stamping now. And if I would do this thing with the frame first, this would be not so nice for stamping. So we are going to finish this up and then finish the frame. And for that, I would like to first take Lumberjack Plaid Distress ink this time, not the oxide ink. You could use the oxide ink, of course, but I want to use the ink to get a more intense result. And I'm going to use the same stamp which I've already used here to make these loose impressions. And now I want to do the opposite thing. So I want to imagine that someone has tried to stamp to this ID card with this red ink, but the first stamp was a fail, and then the person has taken the same stamp and the same ink. I mean, it isn't the same, yeah, but we want to let it look like the same. It's not the same kind of ink because oxide ink and distress ink, but it's the same color, and that makes it harmonious, I would say. And now it looks like the first stamping was a fail, and then the person has done it again. And another thing is, of course, this goes over the photo now, and it has this really cool smear in the background. I really like that. So now let's take some black. I don't necessarily search for something that has to do with an ID card, yeah? So because I want to have these like really artsy, not so authentic, as I said in the beginning. So please just take what you have. This is too long. Can we only take the word collect and then stamp something else to the rest of the surface there? Let's see. Let's take this one here, and I know this is too small to stamp around the photos, but I'm going to take just one edge here and ink only this edge, and then I'm going to stamp, and I'm trying to get it to the outer edge of the photo, just like this. That is cool, isn't it? Please say that this is cool. I like that so much. Okay, and then I think we need something like a handwritten signature on each of these. Make a little line here where the signature can go on, and then I'm just scribbling something like a name. Ooh. That looks a little bit weird, but it's a signature. But something is missing here. Shall we perhaps add 2 lines here? Then just add something small, so that that looks not so empty there. And I really like this combination out of handwriting and stamping, even if this is just, you know, scribbling. Yeah, you could also write something real. Yeah, that's also no problem, but I like it better when it's, yeah, you know, a little bit weird and not so readable. So let's take a paper trimmer again to open the envelope that we have here. I have just taken the envelope because it has 2 layers of paper and I have an easy job now. I can just take this and cut this open here. I'm just bending the tea bags back a little bit so that I don't cut into those, but only into the envelope, and that way I can separate the both layers of the envelope. So now I'm just going around the envelope. The tea bags are not touched by my scissors. If they get in touch with the scissors, I don't care, because this will get really destroyed. But I don't want to tear off the tea bags. Just like that. I show it to you from the back so that you can see better what I have done here now, because from the front it's still covered by the tea bags, but now we can just tear into the tea bags and into the layers of paper from the envelope and, you know, destroy this a little bit. Okie dokie. So I think now I need a Swiffer and after that a vacuum cleaner, but that doesn't matter. We have 3 really interesting, perhaps a little bit unusual ID cards, and I'm really hoping that you like these. Please let me know what you think about this. Is this still an ID card, or is this something else that was inspired by an ID card? Would you use something like this for your junk journal? If yes, would you also use this for a vintage junk journal as something that was inspired by a vintage thing and now it looks totally different? Would you do that? Or do you say, I can't handle that for a vintage journal? I would be really interested in hearing your opinion about that. And if you are interested in the digital paper that I have used here today, then please check out the info box as well. I have linked everything down below there for you. I've also linked the stamps and inks and everything else that I have used here today, except of the tea bags and the envelopes, of course, because they came from my stash. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Be creative and have a very, very great time until we see the next time. Bye bye.